Great. Thanks for coming back to the second half. You never know. Some people do leave, but not tonight. Not tonight, because we've got the gorgeous Arthapriya here, who, well, so many of us love just hearing him talk about anything. Usually he talks about the Dharma, but tonight he's going to be talking about the Dharma with the theme of pilgrimage. And you did a pilgrimage to India in January and February this year. Great. And I think we've arranged the images on the shrine here. So we've got the Buddha at the top, because you're on a Buddhist pilgrimage. I think it goes without saying, doesn't it? But then we've got these other two people on the shrine here, people who we love and revere. On the far side from me is Bhante Sangharakshita. He is the founder of the Triratna Buddhist order, and he lived in India well, he was a student, he was a monk in India for about 20 years. So that was part of your pilgrimage. And Dr. Ambedkar, the great hero, the great modern day hero of Buddhist India, who you might say more about during the pilgrimage talk, is also here. So I think your pilgrimage had these three aspects to them, didn't they?
They did.
So you're going to sort of say more about that. So we're going to try and do a conversation. My job is to not talk too much. See if I can let you get a word in. Yeah. So shall we begin?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm interested. How did this happen? Had you been thinking about pilgrimage for a while? Had you ever been on a pilgrimage?
Yeah, I had been on a pilgrimage to India 20 years before. And when I came back from that trip, I said I would never go to India again. And India can have that effect on you, but it also gets under your skin. It gets into your heart in a way. And never say never to going back to India. And but it was 20 years ago, and things changed quite a lot. I was older.
And wiser.
Wiser, hopefully. But no, there was no forethought. I'm the president of the Ipswich Buddhist Sangha. So that means I go over once or twice a year, and I just spend time with people, find out how it's getting on, encouraging people. And I rang up to find out when would be a good time to go on a new presidential visit. And the chair said, well, you can't come in January or February because we're going to India. And I said, are you? Could I come too? Just like that. Could I come too? And he said, well, that would be terrific. And so it was just completely on the spur of the moment.
Great.
Yeah.
So then, you've now, I mean, you knew the people in Ipswich, but now you really know them.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because the people who were going on the pilgrimage, I didn't know so well. Okay. I knew some of them. And there was a young woman came on the pilgrimage. She'd only been coming along the centre for a few weeks, knew very, very little about Buddhism. And she was going to throw herself in to a 5-week pilgrimage to India with people she didn't know very well. And she was great. She was just so open to everything in India. And it was wonderful to have her aboard. And yet some of them were much more experienced, some experienced order members, but the whole range of people, range of ages, range of people.
Oh, great. So you can see we've got some props for later. So the ambition is to stop at 10 past, and then Arthapriya's got some slides. So we'll see some pictures of some of the people who have been on the pilgrimage and some of the places you went. Yeah.
I should say that Amritchandra had been absolutely ruthless, because I think we took over 1,000 pictures, and I got it down to 200 and something early today, and she said no 45 max. So I think we negotiated a bit, and I think I've got 50 pictures.
Yes, you've got 50. Yeah. So anyhow, we'll speed through some of them. Yeah. But I'm interested to know, so you know, what's the difference for you between sort of going with a group of people to India and to going to some of the sites and things like that, some of the Buddhist sites, maybe of ancient Buddhism, maybe connected to Sangha, maybe of emerging Buddhism? What's the difference? What was the difference for you between just doing that and a pilgrimage?
I don't know quite how to answer that. I'll give you an example. We were at this Tibetan monastery in Sikkim, and just before we turned up, a coachload of tourists, Western tourists, turned up, and it was so apparent the difference between us and them. We were all from the West, but we were there on pilgrimage. We were there to do meditation and puja in the monastery. And the monks who were there, the resident monks who were there, could clearly see that, and were handing us cushions and mats in order to sit in front of the shrine, and offering us scarves to make in our puja. Whereas the tourists were just in to take their photographs and to leave, and tick it, you know, and presumably to tick the box that they'd been to see that particular monastery. I think for me, the pilgrimage had so many different aspects. It had the aspect of revisiting sites that I'd been to before. Sadharaja is here, and he's been on pilgrimage many times in India. He'll know that feeling of going back to that place, going to places I'd never been to before, but building relationships with the pilgrimage. So there were about 20 of us. And it's funny because it's not like a retreat like we're doing, you know, next week. We're doing a retreat, aren't we? Where there's quiet, you know, and it's simplicity. And being on pilgrimage is a little bit like being on holiday, a little bit like being on retreat. Oh, it's such a mixture of things, but you're together. For 24/7, you're together all the time. And India does throw things at you. So people go through quite emotional times. And if I may, can I jump to a particular incident?
Jump away.
We were in, we traveled quite a long way by this point, and we got to Nepal. We crossed the border into Nepal one evening, and a couple of days later, we were in a place called Kapilavastu. And Kapilavastu is a place where Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha, grew up. Married, had a child, made friends. And it's from Kapilavastu that he left in the night to go forth. So we pilgrims were sitting by the Eastern Gate. What's left of the Eastern Gate? There's hardly anything left. It's just outlines of the city. And we were by the Eastern Gate, and I was talking a little bit about what that must have been like for Siddhartha, the Buddha, to leave everything he loved behind, impelled by a search for truth. And sitting there, it was almost like we could look back in time to that night and see this man moving towards the gate to leave. And I said to my friends on the pilgrimage, we all need to leave by that Eastern Gate. That Eastern Gate symbolizes change. It symbolizes leaving behind the world of the familiar and the habitual and the constricted, and stepping out, which is risky and unknown, but which is open and free. And I think that had quite an effect on some of our pilgrims, and they went very, very quiet for the rest of them at the morning. But having said that, I felt that too.
Yeah.
You know, I felt the presence of the Eastern Gate. And you don't need to go to India to experience that. You can experience it right here and now.
And there's something about being in that place. And walking, even if the gates don't exist anymore. You're walking through that gate, and you know, the Buddha did live, and he did live in Kapilavastu.
You're right. I mean,
and he walked through that, place, and he went through that gate.
The importance of place.
Yeah.
And just before we started this evening, we went round, and Amrichandra was leading the meeting, and she said to us, what's your experience of pilgrimage? And some people were saying, well, they're into jazz. They'd been where Ronnie Scott. I don't know who Ronnie Scott is, but
Ronnie Scott's it's a place.
Is it? Yeah. And some people had been to the great galleries in Florence and Rome, and done a kind of cultural pilgrimage. I'd done that. You might go and see a particular musician. Somebody, I think Maria had been to Salzburg to see was it the piano Mozart played, or right, yeah.
Wembley Stadium.
Yeah, Wembley Stadium, could be that. Where you're in the place. Yes, it's a different time, but you're in the place that they were in, she was in, he was in, you know, they were in. And each of the Buddhist stories, it always begins with where the Buddha was. Thus have I heard at one time when the Buddha was staying at Savatthi in Jeta Grove at Arthapriya's Park. Well, we were in Jeta's Grove at Arthapriya's Park, or what is left of it. We were in Savatthi, and we were sitting there reading these stories to one another. It had more of an effect than people thought.
Yeah. It does. And my experience of doing various pilgrimages is that it can be magic when you're there, or maybe it's just you'd end up negotiating just being there. But you come home, and somehow it has an effect on me, and it's like, oh, I know I've been there. Yeah.
Sometimes it's a delayed effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the time, you just got off the bus and you've only got half an hour to look around, you know, and you look around. And these days, of course, you take and even though it says do not take photographs, kind of the Buddhists get their camera. Anyway, it comes back later.
Yeah.
When you've got more space.
Yeah. So I'm just going to try and see if we can just start at the beginning. So you landed in Mumbai. The group left from, not from Ipswich, but, you know, close by, and landed in Mumbai. And then where did you go from there?
We went to Barja Retreat Centre. Now, around Mumbai airport is one of the biggest slums in the world. It's really grim. So looking through the minibus window, it was really grim, the conditions in which people are living there. It's heartbreaking, you know. And we drove out of the city, and we left the city behind eventually, and then we drove into the countryside to Barja Retreat Centre, which is beautiful and quiet. And the Barja Retreat Centre, which is a modern retreat centre, but it looks towards these ancient caves. And in the caves, hewn into the rock, is an ancient Buddhist monastery. And Amrichandra was ordained at Barja.
I'm an Indian order member, actually.
So you had your ordination then, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I was aware of that when I was there.
Yeah.
Aware of you.
Yeah. Well, that's nice. And it is amazing. So it's a retreat centre. That's a Triratna retreat centre. And it's just near a little village. And they've built the retreat centre on one side, and the Buddha in the meditation hall looks across the valley, metaphorically, into the Chaitya hall of the old Buddhist site, and it's from the second or the first century before the Common Era. So it's an ancient cave, and it's before the image of the Buddha. So
there's a stupa, isn't
there's
there?
A stupa.
Yeah. And in the monastery, it's really interesting. In the monastery, the water tanks, they gathered water in the rainy season. The water tanks still work, still collect water. Yeah. And it's almost like you could move in. You know, the cells, the beds are still there. The beds are rock. They're just rock shelves in which the monks lived. And you've got the shrine room because it's carved out of the rock. And when the sun sets in the evening, as it did when we were there, we just done puja there, the sun breaks into the shrine hall, into the Chaitya hall, and lights up the stupa at the end. Oh, it's quite magical. It was quite magical. Yeah. And then we moved from ancient India to modern Buddhism and modern India. We went into Pune, which is a big city in Maharashtra, in sort of central India, and that's the heartland of the new Buddhists. So we've got a really big Buddhist center, a number of Buddhist centers in Pune, and we went to see the social projects because there are order members and mitras in India working in all sorts of areas. They're teaching youngsters how to operate computers, sewing classes, antenatal classes, kindergartens. They're counseling women over domestic abuse, which is a real problem in India. Students can come and have some quieter time preparing for their exams. It's a real hub. There's a medical center there. And for the Indian movement there, it's really important that their Buddhism is about helping their fellows, and it's open to you whether you're a Buddhist or not. So it's not just Buddhists who can come and get help and aid from there, but it's usually it's working with the kind of the lowest, the people who are marginalized. Oh, it's really, I found it really inspiring.
Yeah. It's great there. I've been there too.
We're going to see a slide or two of that.
Yeah. And actually, lots of our friends here in Cambridge come from Pune. Yeah.
And women's empowerment is a big thing. And Dr. Ambedkar said that if you really want to see whether a section of society is actually making any progress, is actually kind of developing, well, the men give you some idea, but actually you need to look at the women and the children. That tells you whether a section of society is actually being uplifted,
getting more opportunities.
So a lot of energy is put into that.
Yeah. It's great to go to that Vihara, and in the evenings, the kids are all sitting on the steps and the sort of the lead up to the Vihara, and they're all doing their homework together. It's really lovely. Everyone's just hanging around. You can just go in. There's a beautiful Buddha. You can meditate. Someone's bound to offer you tea and things like that. It's really lovely being there. And there's a river behind, isn't there? But it was set up in an area that was a slum area to start with, because that's where the Dalit community lived. And it was a really big achievement to build this beautiful Vihara. But of course, it's being gentrified now. People are being uplifted. So they're making sure that the Buddhist communities can stay in that area. Yeah. Oh, great. So great. So we've seen quite a lot, and we've only just started your pilgrimage tour. So what was up to next?
Well, we went to Ellora and Ajanta, famous UNESCO kind of heritage caves in again in Maharashtra, and they were just out of this world. There were so many of them; it was hard to see. Again, we've got one or two clips, but you need to go. You need to go on the next pilgrimage. And they were lost for 800 years. They were lost, and it was a British officer in the Raj who was out hunting tigers or something, who discovered a cave. The tiger went into a cave, and he followed the tiger in, and discovered these Buddhist caves. And they're beautifully painted and beautifully carved, and they go way back into the rock. So you've got whole monasteries cut out of the rock. And you see the development of Buddhism from the simple forms of early Buddhism into more and more kind of elaborate. But one thing that made me think this one thing alone was worth going on pilgrimage, I think it was at Janta, and they've got very low lighting because they need to preserve the paintings. they're not doing a very good job, actually. It's very sad. But out of the gloom of this particular beautiful cave, this face came out, and it was the face of Padmapani. Again, you'll see a slide, doesn't do justice to it. And I'm not kidding you, it was a bit like going into a dark attic, and in the gloom there, seeing a kind of Da Vinci painting in the back, you know. And it was alive. We were kind of mesmerized, you know, by it. And we were very different. When we went into caves, we wanted to do some chanting, we wanted to do some meditation. And everybody, I was really amazed, everybody was really respectful to that. So they sat down with us to chant or meditate, or they moved back to let us have the space. But it was clear going around these wonderful kind of cave monasteries that India at the time was very, very sophisticated, and very, very kind of culturally sophisticated. Outstanding. I mean,
oh yeah, they're completely amazing.
Been,
I have been. Yeah. I have been. This is where I mustn't take up too much time.
Yeah,
I have been, and they are, and you can see the Buddhist images and Buddhist thinking develop by looking at the images, but you can also see who's coming. There's one beautiful painted hall. So not all, but so especially in Ellora, there are more painted halls. With beautiful frescoes and painted ceilings to look like ceiling hangings and fabrics. And there's one with Chinese dragons going round it, and Chinese pilgrims. So, you know, somebody from China came and they would have commissioned this to be done as a gift to the monastery. And you can see, you know, from the 4th or the 5th century, there's Chinese pilgrims, pilgrim before you, Chinese pilgrims offering to the monastery. So, and these beautiful, beautiful paintings coming up, but also the beautiful rock carvings. And it is stunning. I think there's 23 or 28 caves at Ajanta.
Yeah.
And then at Ellora more. And one thing I really loved, because at Ellora there's Jain, Buddhist, and Hindu caves, and by that stage the kings were Hindu, so the patronage there, the royal patronage really went into the Hindu caves. And I mean, cave isn't the right word for it. You walk in and it's just extraordinary. I don't know how many larger than life-size elephants are sculpted, but it's a palace. It's this glorious palace. It's amazing. You don't have any idea what you're going into, but it's really busy with a lot of carvings and images, and I mean, it's really amazing. And then I went to the Buddhist caves, and it's like, oh, I got it, the simplicity of the Buddhist image, just the sort of the serenity that they gave off, just being there and going from one place to the other. I was like, oh, I get it. Really seemed very different.
It changed your state of mind.
Yeah.
Going into those caves, and such an aesthetic. I don't know. Very moving. You know.
Really moving. Yeah. And those caves were on old trade routes, which lots of them really were, but a really big trade route from a seaport further down the west coast up.
I just realized it's 9 o'clock, so we better.
Yeah. So where are we now?
Well, we better skip over some of it,
So we've done some ancient Buddhism, and we've touched a little bit on new Buddhism, revivalist Buddhism.
Yeah. Let's go to Bodh Gaya. I mean, we're making quite a jump now because it was 5 weeks, and Bodh Gaya was towards the second half.
So what's Bodh Gaya?
Bodh Gaya is the place where the Buddha gained enlightenment. And if you read the text, it was a very, very quiet, very still place. It is not like that anymore. It's a very busy space. And I think for some of the pilgrims who were with us who'd never been to India before, Bodh Gaya was quite a blast. The Mahabodhi temple was quite a blast. So you've got this sort of temple, which is like a tower, and it's built a little bit like a mandala, so you can circumambulate the tower, and there are stupas and images all over
the tree. And the tree.
And the tree, of course, the Bodhi tree is there, or a descendant of the Bodhi tree. And when we were there, the Tibetans were in occupation. That's the only way to describe it. And it blew, you know, an old phrase, it blew the minds of some of the people that we were with, because we went in and suddenly it was kind of, you know, at a loud volume, the Tibetans chanting and blowing their trumpets.
Fantastic.
And it was like having an archetypal dream, and we just flowed into the dream, you know. And so it is possible. We heard about focus and breath, didn't we, in the meditation? It is possible to sit in meditation with all this going on and find depth within the mind, you know. And I loved it. I really, really loved it. There was one funny bit. I don't know whether I should mention this or not, but there was a bell at one point during the Tibetan ceremonies, and then something like 800 monks headed to the gentleman's toilet. And I was on my way there too. And it was just a sea of maroon, and everybody kind of push in, you know. So there's that aspect of it too.
Well, they do serve tea in those ceremonies, don't they? Maybe they need to serve less tea.
Yeah. But Bodh Gaya, the place where the Buddha gained enlightenment, is just so many strands of the Buddhist tradition are there. Chinese, Thai, Burmese, Tibetan, American, Brits, you know.
Korean, Thai.
Lots of Korean Buddhists.
Yeah.
And all chanting their own particular thing.
Yeah.
And you feel, it sounds a bit new age, but you feel the kind of the vibration of something there. As if the enlightenment experience is still reverberating from that kind of spot.
Yeah.
And we just formed a part of that.
Yes. Because you guys were all in blue, weren't you?
We were in blue, yeah.
Blue, so then very identifiable group.
Yeah,
which is great, because then you can see who hasn't joined the bus yet.
Yeah, that's right.
Who's missing?
Yeah, you can.
Who's gone for an extra chai, just trying to sort of slip it in. Yeah.
And each place we went to had a different kind of atmosphere. So enlightenment was this, I don't know, joyous, solemn, deep atmosphere. And then we went to Sarnath, which is where the Buddha taught the Dharma for the first time after enlightenment. And that had its own kind of particular atmosphere. And then we went to Kushinagar, as it's called now, where the Buddha passed into Nirvana, died. And that had a very different kind of atmosphere too.
What's that place like?
It's got a temple, and in the temple is this huge Buddha statue of the Buddha lying down, and like that, and it's absolutely chocker in there with different Buddhists, and they all kind of make space for one another. It's quite lovely, you know. And I remember sitting next to this old Tibetan man, and so I sat down. I thought, you know, maybe he wouldn't speak English, but he said to me, "That's where we all end up." You know, and asked me why I was there, you know, and he was on pilgrimage, I was on pilgrimage. So lovely atmosphere between the different groups. Yes.
Yeah, recognizing fellow pilgrims, sharing a bit of Dharma feeling.
Yeah. And it's meaningful to ours in our order, because Bhante Sangharakshite got ordained in Kushinagar.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They had refused him ordination in Sarnath, and he walked 100 miles during the heat of the summer to get to Kushinagar with his friend.
Time. Yeah.
And was ordained there.
Right. Yeah. How do I mean, you know that, is it, how do you keep track of what happens where? Do you
We had an itinerary. Is that what you mean? We had an itinerary.
Well, but also just to go, oh yeah, Bhante was ordained here.
Yeah.
Do people remember? Do you share the stories?
Yeah. Oh, we do. Yeah, on the bus.
Yeah.
When we get there, we tell stories about what happened here, what was the significance. Because sometimes you turn up and it's just a pile of stones, and you don't say, and here is another pile of stones. You say, what is the significance of that? And sometimes it just takes a bit of imagination. We went to a place called Nalanda.
Oh,
yeah. Now Nalanda was one of the most famous universities in the world. It was founded maybe 1600 years ago, long before universities in Europe, and it had 10,000 students and taught all sorts of subjects, including not just Buddhism but astronomy, mathematics, logic, medicine. And it was all buried under a hill. And a amateur British archaeologist, Cunningham, found where it was and excavated. Now the locals thought it was a brick factory, so they needed some bricks to build. They would go along to Nalanda with their wheelbarrow and put bricks in, these ancient bricks, from this ancient university, and wheel them back to the village. A bit like, I don't know, you'd go to Stonehenge and start putting the pillars.
Well, a bit like
wheelbarrow.
Abbey House.
Yeah.
I live in a house just down the road, and half of it's built from an old monastery.
Yeah.
We've got a few arches and sort of balustrades and things like that. You reuse the stone, don't you? Yeah. So,
but that was the strange thing. Sometimes we went to a stupa, and a stupa is where they put some relics, so it's a particular kind of shape, and sometimes they're huge, and some of them people thought were just hills. And there was one particular stupa which was the biggest in India, and 3/4 of it has been excavated, so you can see the shape of the stupa. But 1/4 of it is still covered in trees and grass, and you can see the hill. And you think, how could it get lost?
How could it get lost?
Like Buckingham Palace is, just overgrown and lost, or Westminster Abbey, But that's what happened.
That's how,
just the locals would know something.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So let's just move on to Bhante. So Sangharakshita. So you went to some places in northern India.
We did. We went to Darjeeling, and we went to Kalimpong. And Kalimpong is where Bhante Sangharakshita was left by his teacher to work for Buddhism. When he was a young monk, I think he was 22, something like that. And we stayed in his hermitage. We went to visit another place where he founded a monastery, and there were pictures of him there with famous teachers like the Dalai Lama and famous Tibetan teachers. Dada Rinpoche, who was Bhante's teacher, we went to his school. It's no longer a school. But we went into where he lived.
So what's that like? Because, I mean, many of us have read his autobiography and read his books or heard the stories. So what's it like to be there and walk around and face Mount Kanchenjunga?
Well, we didn't see Kanchenjunga, which I think is the second tallest mountain in the world, is it, or the third, until we got to Sikkim. It was cloudy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the hermitage where Bhante lived is still a little oasis of peace and tranquility, but Kalimpong itself, India is expanding. India is kind of building, and buildings are kind of encroaching. So Bhante, when he first arrived, would go out and beg on his arms round. You can't imagine anybody. You'd have to go past Domino's Pizza, which we went into, quite good pizzas. But in Kalimpong, a Domino's Pizza, it's like having a McDonald's in Well, there is a McDonald's in Lhasa.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
you know, I felt in touch with the young Sangha there, because that's where so many of the principles and ideas of this movement originated.
Yeah.
In his mind in Kalimpong.
Yeah.
That's where he understood the Buddha's teaching.
Yeah.
And we went to Darjeeling, and in Darjeeling, Bhante went to, when he was a young man, went into a Tamang Buddhist temple. And in the Tamang Buddhist temple, which we went to visit, is a figure of a teacher called Padmasambhava. And Padmasambhava was an 8th century teacher who went to convert Tibet to Buddhism. And he's a kind of tantric guru. And when you're in Sikkim, you see him everywhere. Again, we're going to see some slides. It's a bit like this teacher from 1400 years ago is still very, very much alive to the people. And Sangharakshita was once asked, well, what is the meaning of Padmasambhava? And he said, transformation. Transformation of oneself into something more aware, more alive, more enlightened, more compassionate.
And when you're there, did you get that feeling?
Oh yeah. We went to Sikkim, and we drove up this mountain, and at the top of the mountain is this colossal figure of Padmasambhava, the biggest in the world, and you're kind of like that, and you feel the presence of him. He was just in short, he was a teacher who helped the Tibetans convert their demons. So in Buddhism, you don't exile the demons, you don't destroy the demons. You convert them to Buddhism. They become protectors of the Dharma. They become compassionate and protectors of the Dharma. We don't kill our dragons. Our dragons protect the Dharma.
Yeah. Great. Well, let's see if we can see a few of these pictures. We're just going to do a little rearranging of the room. People along here might need to just shuffle. Thanks, Ketu Raja. Oh, he's really taking this seriously, isn't he? There we go. Okay.
So this is us in Ipswich just before we get on the minibus to the airport.
Thanks, Ketu.
That's us arriving at Mumbai. Those are 2 other members who were on the team that looked after us so well. Bodhi tours. They present us with those coloured scarves, the colours of the Buddhist flag. And then we go to Barja, which is this peaceful kind of oasis, but a couple of days just to get over the grueling trip of the flight out. And this is Barja Caves. This is up the hill a bit from the retreat centre. So these are the ancient, 2,000 years old and more, these caves. And that is the retreat centre. I haven't got a better picture of it, that looks up at the stupa on the hill. And that's us in the kind of shrine hall. You can see the sun is setting there, can't you, in the shadows?
Yeah, and you all look so fantastic in your blues. Yeah. You look like a really coherent group.
Yeah. That's us in one of the little caves there.
Wow, great view.
This is us, change of scene. This is us in Pune at Jivaka, the medical centre there. That's one of the social workers giving us something to eat. And they have antenatal clinics and all sorts of social work coming out of that. And
the pictures at the back, sorry, I've just helped, Dr. Ambedkar and other great reformers.
Yeah.
2 women as well as 2 men, Mahatma Phule.
Yeah. This is us in the shrine room of the Mahavihar. We we not hijacked, but we entered a day retreat, much to their amusement. Women on one side, men on the other, which is very traditional. And that's all of them. They were so welcoming to us. Dr. Ambedkar, who is at the center of it all, the great social reformer, who led the Dalits, the oppressed, to Buddhism, new life in Buddhism. In 1956, he led the mass conversion. There are now millions of new Buddhists in India. And that's them saying goodbye to us. It was a bit of a pull to leave them, actually. This is us visiting a girls' hostel. There's probably about, I don't know, 50 or 60 young girls who welcomed us there. And again, a lot of attention is given to empowering women and making sure that girls stay with their education and are not married off early. There are pressures in India to do that.
Sorry.
They were really lovely.
So a hostel is a place where village children can come and live, so they can continue their education.
That's at, I think that's Kala Caves. That's one of the rock-cut caves. The elephants, they're cut out of the rock. Really lovely. And this particular image, it doesn't do justice to it. The face was so kind of serene.
Yeah.
An image of Tara there, Bodhisattva of compassion. Again, these are all cut out of the rock. And this is the image I was talking about. This image emerged out of the gloom. This is a Bodhisattva figure. A Bodhisattva is, well, in this case, an archetypal being who strives for the enlightenment of all. This is a Bodhisattva of compassion.
Very famous image.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
This is kind of paintings on the ceiling, as you were saying, and some of them are really, really ornate. And all lost for a millennium. This is Nagaloka, which is our kind of Buddhist, in a way, Buddhist university and campus, where youngsters from all over India can come and be trained in social work and Buddhist studies. So the figure here is very, very large. I couldn't find a person apart from myself to give it some sort of, you know.
Oh, right, wow.
Very large. And this is me in one of the shrine rooms. It's all kind of open, so you've got all this greenery around. A lovely place to meditate. And the students there are great. This is Sanchi, which is where some of the Buddha's remains were in the stupa. And this was lost again for hundreds of years. And Cunningham, I think, found it and helped to restore it. But it's quite something. It's really, really stunning. Some of the carvings on it. You went to it.
I've never been. That's why I'm stopping with that.
Yeah, it's lovely. That's really lovely.
Yeah. One of the stupas established by the Emperor Ashoka. So not one of the originals.
And then, this is a very poor picture of Kapilarashtra with our guide. And we're standing near the east gate. But I hadn't got any other photos. You're going to have to imagine. That's Eric, who is from Ipswich. This is where the Buddha to be left home and went into the wild in search of enlightenment.
Wow.
This is at Kushinagar, and the building behind is where Bhante Sangharakshita was ordained as a Buddhist monk. This is a stupa that was a hill. I think this is the one I talked about, one of the biggest, or the biggest in India, completely covered up. But in its heyday, people would have come here in their thousands to make offerings. There would have been, it would have been quite ornate. This, I think, is at Bodh Gaya. This is our land at Bodh Gaya. And when we have conventions in India, this is turned with other marquees into a place for us to have our convention. And then Bodh Gaya itself, the big temple down the road, is just a short rickshaw ride away. Again, that stupa that we saw a little bit earlier on. You can see, look, it's jumping ahead a bit.
Sorry.
Let's move on, shall we? This is Kushinagar. This is the big Buddha. This place marks the place where the Buddha left the world, went into parinirvana, died, and it's got quite a lot of atmosphere, very solemn, but joyful atmosphere actually. This is Nalanda. Again, this was all buried. Nobody knew where Nalanda was. This was one of the biggest universities in the ancient world. As I say, 10,000 students, thousands of teachers. And you can see how it was buried, how it was kind of excavated. Lots of stupas, lots of little monastery colleges, a bit like Cambridge with its little colleges around. Now this is Vulture's Peak. This is where the Buddha gave some very important teachings, where he would go as well to get away from the bustle of India. It's quite high up. There it's at night. If you've heard of the Diamond Sutra, the Lotus Sutra, I think, were taught here, as well as a lot of earlier sutras. And this is Darjeeling. God, we are jumping around, aren't we? Yeah. This is Darjeeling, and this is the temple which Bhante saw Padmasambhava for the first time. That's us just having done some chanting inside. It's quite a small temple, and that's the image he saw. Notice the Coca-Cola offerings on the shrine.
Wow.
That's quite popular actually to offer. And this is the highest railway, I think, in the world. This is the Trans-Himalayan Railway, I think. That here it's running from Darjeeling to Goom, which is a monastery town above. And this is one of the images. This is a huge image in Goom Monastery. One of Bhante's teachers, Dada Rinpoche, was the abbot of Goom Monastery. Lama Govinda talks about this particular image. And that, we stopped on the minibus, and that is a view down to the Teesta River. So we're quite high up. That's the first place Bhante lived in when he moved to Kalimpong. It's really falling apart now. It was a Dharmadaya Vihara, Dharmadaya monastery, and it's not in a very good state. An image of Padmasambhava. They're all over Darjeeling and Sikkim. I really like this particular image. That's Bhante with the Dalai Lama at, I think, in Kalimpong. Lotus Lake, I thought it would be good to have a slide of a Lotus Lake. Lotuses are really important in Buddhism and, of course, Hinduism, Jainism. And this is the figure, that's one of our pilgrims down below. This is the colossal figure of Padmasambhava outside Pelling, I think, in Sikkim. Sikkim used to be a separate kingdom, when Bhante was in India, but it's now joined the Indian Union. That's a staggering place to go to. That's the Bodhisattva of Compassion, Avalokiteshvara or Chenrezig in Tibetan. That's another huge Buddha figure in Sikkim Buddha Park, I think.
So they're in the same place? Or?
No, they're in different places.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a temple under both of them. You really get a sense of the presence of the figure.
Wow. So this is the last thing.
This is a Tibetan monastery we went to. Bit of music there.
So that was your last image?
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your whistle-stop tour through.
Good.
Wow. Well, from the dark, Goom is the best named place in the world, don't you think? From the gloom and the dark. Wait, Peter, I just listened to the lights on. I want to thank Arthapriya so much for just bringing us on pilgrimage with him, just for a little taste. And it's just delightful to hear about this. But one reason we thought we'd get Arthapriya to come and talk to us is that in 2025, there'll be a convention in India for people who are ordained. And we thought we might do a pilgrimage, a Cambridge pilgrimage, linked to that for anyone from the Sangha. So that would be really sort of open. So Sarvajit and Jane are saying that they're sort of really interested to go and sort of looking to sort of coordinate. So Sarvajit is there. Where's Jane? Oh, there's Jane. So the two of them. So if you want to know any more, or sort of, find out more, talk to them, or just, give anyone your name, but put it into your mind. Pilgrimage to India, Cambridge Sangha, who knows, like around the beginning of 2025. Yeah.
Can I just say that somebody was saying in the reporting in, weren't they, that I don't know about going to India, and it's not just the sites. You see them with the pilgrimage, you see them with other people. It's a really good way of making friends. It's a really good way of a Sangha coming together and bonding kind of strongly, because you have to look out for one another. You have to look out and you have to look after one another. And the people I went on pilgrimage at the Ipswich Sangha, I will never forget them. And they feel very, very kind of close to me. And they didn't at the beginning. A lot of them I didn't know. But you get to know one another. And you see each other in all sorts of different states, inspired, a bit poorly, whatever it is. So if you're interested, you don't need to commit yourself, but you could what's the word? Express your interest.
Yeah.
We'd probably go I went for 5 weeks. It's a bit long, 5 weeks. Probably go for 2-3 weeks, wouldn't we? Yeah.
3 weeks. 3 weeks at least, I reckon.
Yeah.
4 weeks. Yeah. I don't think 5 weeks sounds long enough, actually. Yeah. But anyhow, thank you so much, Arthapriya.